What's going on, guys? It's Low Floored and welcome back to another SCUM video. In this video I wanted to cover some of the leaks regarding the new medical system that is coming to SCUM. It's looking like it's going to be a really in-depth system, and it's kind of throwing me some Project Zomboid vibes, which is super awesome. But if you guys do enjoy the video and you do learn something, make sure to hit that like button down below and subscribe to the channel to not miss out on any future videos. Thanks for popping out, guys. I really do appreciate it, and let's get into the video. So here we have a chart that's showing us bone fractures and how they affect the player. It looks like there are 5 different stages of bone fractures, and they will affect you differently while taking into account your constitution skill. The type 0 stage is when your character is perfectly healthy, but once you hit the stress factor stage, there will be a 2% damage bonus to your character if you do not stabilize yourself. If the fracture hasn't been stabilized and the limb is put to use by performing tasks more difficult than effortless, there's a 0.5 to 1% damage per minute. With each 1% damage, the fracture will move on to the next stage. So I'm guessing the higher constitution, the less damage you will take when having a fracture. And as you can see for the rest of the stages, the amount of damage done to your player will increase if you have not stabilized yourself, and the healing time will also be increased significantly. But when that fracture moves to the displaced closed or open stages, you will begin bleeding out. So basically in the stress factor phase, your bones have cracked, but hasn't been fully broken, so you won't suffer as bad as the other stages. But there will be an increase of stamina consumption when in the later stages, as well as performing actions will take longer to do, such as reloading a gun or even lockpicking. Which makes sense because if you have a broken arm, you're not going to be running full speed and reloading guns like you're John Wick. But you can take some painkillers to alleviate the pain, but it will not heal your player until you stabilize the limb yourself. Now, when you have a leg injury, you will be able to limp like we do now in game, but can perform other actions with some penalties. You can only jog or run with painkillers, and if a player tries to jog or run, they will fall to the ground. They made a note saying ideally it would be better to have some kind of injury animation where players take a few steps and then start limping faster, or drop to the ground when stamina is depleted, which would be super cool. I mean, imagine being chased by a dude with a chainsaw and you run out of stamina on a broken leg and you just fall to the ground and get wrecked. It would be awesome. But if both legs are injured, then the player will have to crawl in order to move, which is hilarious and scary at the same time. So with painkillers, players can move normally, but once painkillers are gone, the player will fall to the ground. So when resting and having a leg injury, your character will not suffer the penalties as you see on screen, nor will the passive actions. But effortless tasks will increase the stamina you use and reduce your performance by 5 to 10%, but you will not take any damage. When doing tiring actions, your player will start to take 0.5 to 1% damage, and the stamina consumption will increase to 10 to 20%, and your performance will be reduced by 10 to 20%. And the chance to black out will be increased to 1 to 5%. Now, when you're exerting yourself, the damage will increase further to 1 to 2%, and stamina consumption will increase to 20 to 30%, as well as the reduction in performance. And you will also have an increased chance to black out by 5 to 10%, which is not something you want happening. So having a higher constitution is definitely going to be the move if you don't want to deal with these types of penalties. Lastly, we see arm injuries, and the player can walk, jog, or run without penalties, but if the left arm is broken, holding and operating one-handed weapons and tools is performed without penalty. If the injury is on the right arm, all actions like one-handed or two-handed actions will have penalties unless you have taken painkillers. Now we are going to take a look at the recovery procedure. The first thing players need to do is stop the bleeding. Bleeding can be stopped with several items depending on the severity and the player's skill. If the wound is not critical and doesn't need stitching, it will immediately enter the stabilization phase. If the bleeding stops, the wound still remains within the untreated section, but it indicates bleeding stopped. If the wound is not stitched and if players keep pushing it by performing tedious and exhausting actions, the wound may start bleeding again. There's a cumulative chance of 3 to 5%, depending on your constitution skill, per minute that the bleeding will start again. Once the injury is successfully stitched, the wound will enter the stabilization phase, and then the recovery phase begins. To stop the bleeding, the following items can be used. Rags can be used in a pinch to control bleeding or bind an injury. A high chance of wound infection per use. And dirty rags can be used also but the infection chance for them is raised to 75%. A bandage has the same effects as a rag but has been sterilized with some sort of astringent, and it has a low chance of infection. You can also craft bandages from the sterilized rags with alcohol. Then we have the presser dressing, aka the Israeli bandage, that is pre-packaged and is sterile. Then we have the hemostatic bandage or powder, and this is instantaneous hemorrhage control. Lastly, we have the tourniquet, which gives us limb hemorrhage control for critical bleeds. And all these items can be used with any skill, but depending on the skill and the wound level, the procedure will take more items and take more time. Players can combine different types of items to patch up the wound as well. So as you can see from the chart, each class of hemorrhages have their own values pertaining to which item you are using and the level of skill your character will have. And it looks like we'll be getting a medical skill when this patch drops, and as such, having a higher medical skill will help you with how many items you will need to patch yourself up. But each of these 5 medical items have different benefits in certain situations. A class 1 hemorrhage isn't the worst thing that can happen to you, and if you have no medical skill, you will need to use 2 rags to patch yourself up with a 15% chance of catching an infection. And if you check the class 4 hemorrhage, you will see that you will need 5 rags to patch up with a 30% chance of an infection, which is pretty high. And since you need to have 5 rags instead of 2, that will take 25 seconds to patch your player up as opposed to 10 seconds with no skill. But as you can see, having a better medical item will not only help you with your infection chance, but will also give you a stabilization bonus to help you heal up faster. And the level of medical skill you have will determine a bonus in stabilization and infection. So having a higher medical skill will help you get back into a fight much faster than having a low skill. Tomislav also showed off some of the UI that will be coming with this medical update, and it's looking super clean and easy to navigate to see what parts of your body have been hit or injured. It's looking really awesome so far, and I can't wait to see this in game. Lastly, we got a glimpse of how wound infections will work. On the left side, we can see a huge list of different issues that can happen to your character, from damaging your kidneys to bacterial infections. And this is just showing the amount of depth that the devs at Gamepires are putting into the system to make it as realistic as possible. Notice how many pages this document has. Hell, I wonder if we're going to even have to brush our teeth because it shows that we can have toothaches. I mean, it would be really messed up if your wisdom teeth are coming in and you slowly start taking damage when you eat. I think that'd be hilarious. Next, if we take a look at the top page here, we can see that we will need to remove bullets from our bodies. And when our muscles are at class 2 hemorrhage, we can stop the bleeding with bandages, rags, or hemo powder, and we can also stitch up the wound as well. Rib fractures from entry will require us to mend the bones with rags to keep the ribs in place, and same goes for rib fractures from what I'm guessing a bullet is leaving the ribs. It then says this next part is optional, but if the medic first takes care of the muscle tissue damage that's in class 2, and then goes for the kidney surgery, a new wound will be created because the medic has to open the player to get to the kidney. The new wound will be a class 1 hemorrhage. And that just sounds so awesome because if a buddy of ours is hurt and one of the teammates is a doctor or a medic, they can help patch up and stitch up our buddy, which would just be super dope. They then say it would be cool if players could remove other players' organs out. Let's say that the player has one failed kidney, so he captures a donor and takes their kidney and replaces his own. Or just takes both kidneys and sells them on the kidney market. Or cooks them and serves them with Chianti and some fava beans. Or just hangs them on the rear view mirror of his car. And you know what? That would be fucking awesome. I know the RP community will definitely have a field day with this one. I mean, imagine opening up a black market and selling organs. Having a showroom of all of the organs that you've collected. I think that would be pretty sick. But moving on to wound infections, it says untreated or badly treated wounds have a chance to get infected. Infection is the invasion of an organism's body tissues by disease-causing agents, their multiplication, and the reaction of host tissues of these organisms and the toxins they produce. So now, we're having stages for the wounds as well. Stage 1 starts with incubation and starts within 10 to 20 minutes of getting an infection and takes 1 to 2 minutes to recover. You can tell if you're in this stage because your body temperature will increase to 37 degrees Celsius, or for my US homies, 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit, which is starting to warm up to get close to a fever. But there will be an MSR growth of 0.1% per minute, and you will be fatigued and your performance will be reduced by 10%, and a cumulative 5% per minute with a chance for ECG rhythms graph type A or G. And I don't really know what the hell that means, so if you guys figure it out, make sure to put that in the comments below. But moving on, we can see that there is a fever stage. This can last for 30 to 60 minutes unless you treat yourself. Your body will will increase its temperature to 38 degrees Celsius, which is a fever, and the MSR growth will be increased to 0.2% per minute, and your fatigue will increase as well. Your performance will be reduced by 20%, and your character will start breathing faster than normal, and your heart rate will increase as well. So it's safe to say that the other stages will definitely hurt your character, and I'm sure that you can even die if you're not taking care of yourself. And the last stage that we can see is the gangrene stage, which will increase your body temperature to 39 degrees Celsius, which is hot as hell, and the MSR growth is increased to 0.5% per minute, and your performance will be reduced by 30%, and you will still have the rapid breathing and increased heart rate. You will also begin vomiting with a cumulative chance of 1% per minute, and you will also lose an additional 150 milliliters of fluids, and you will lose 70% of your calories every time that you vomit, which is really messed up for your character, but makes sense because when you're that sick, it's really hard to keep anything down in your stomach. But that's gonna wrap up this video. Thanks for coming out, guys. I really do appreciate it. And if you did learn something and enjoyed the content, hit that like button to help a fellow piece of bread out, and subscribe so you don't miss another video. But tell me, guys, are you excited about this new medical system? What features do you want to see in SCUM? Let me know in the comments below. But thanks again for coming out to watch the video. I really do appreciate it. I'm Loaf Lord, and stay toasty out there.